Welcome everyone to I have my DNA results for genealogy test results. Now what? My name is Rhonda Hoffman. I'm the genealogy librarian in the Grosvenor Room at the Central Library in downtown Buffalo. There's my email address, hoffmanr@buffalolib.org. I can tell you it again at the end if you'd like. As I mentioned, the Grosvenor Room is in the Central Library, downtown Buffalo. It has genealogy, local history, maps, rare books, and music scores. We're open the same hours as the rest of the library. We always have librarians there to assist you. We do have some different policies than the rest of the library. For example, we would have you put any bags, purses, containers in lockers when you are in the Grosvenor Room. They do lock. And we also don't allow food or drink in the Grosvenor Room. The only time you'd ever have to make an appointment to visit us is if you wanted to view a rare book, which it would tell you in our online catalog if something was a rare book. And if you wanted to see something in the rare book room, you would just give the library a call and we would set up an appointment with you. So let's get started with our program. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to talk about a few different DNA tests. Mainly, I'm going to talk about Ancestry DNA. So once you get your results and you log into your account, you'll see these three different sections: DNA story, DNA matches, and through lines. And today we're going to talk mainly about DNA matches. So you would click there. You'll notice throughout the presentation that I've covered up any kind of identifying information of my matches. So things like photos and names have been either covered up or changed for my presentation for privacy. So once you click on your DNA match list, you'll see your matches in order of closeness. So the closest relationship to you will be towards the top, and then it'll go down from there. So for my results, my parents are at the top, and the testing company knows that the first two matches are either my parent or my child, and you can see it says that parent/child. If you look down a little bit, there's a match, David Stevens, and you can see he's a first to second cousin match. And it says where number 3 is there, it tells how many centimorgans of DNA we share in common. Centimorgans is the unit of measurement for DNA. And we share 648 centimorgans. If you click either the relationship name or where it tells you the centimorgans, then it will give you the possible DNA relationships. So the further the relationship is away from you, the more possibilities of relationships there are. If someone comes up as a parent or child to you, that's definitely either your parent or your child. But once you get further away than, say, like a sibling match, then there could be many possibilities. So you can see that they grouped different relationships according to the likelihood that that is the relationship to your match. So you can see these matches are pretty close. Some have a 51% chance of you having that relationship, and there's a 48% chance in the second grouping. And then there's a less than 1% chance beyond that. So there's a lot of possibilities for me and David Stevens. There's another website that you can go to. Sometimes the DNA results, they don't necessarily list all of the relationship possibilities. And this free website, dnapainter.com, if you go there and click on where it says tools, you can then choose shared centimorgan tool. And once you go to that tool, you'll see a chart, and most importantly, towards the top here where the red arrow is, you can input the number of centimorgans that you share with your selected match. So I put in 648 centimorgans, and it gives me some possibilities, just like the way Ancestry did. So you can see possibilities like great aunt or uncle, half great aunt, great uncle, half first cousin once removed, and so on and so on. And once you're in your results list, if you happen to recognize someone on your list, it will ask you, do you recognize them? So you can put the exact relationship in here if you are sure you know the relationship to your match. So if you do recognize the person, you could click yes, and then it'll give you a list of different relationship possibilities, and you would choose the select one. So just be sure that you're sure of the relationship. If you're not quite sure, I know relationships can be confusing sometimes. You know, if it's something beyond your first cousin, I think it gets confusing as to how exactly you are related to an individual. So what you would do is, to figure out your exact relationship, is you want to determine the most recent common ancestral couple. So looking at David Stevens and me, so David Stevens, you can see here, the next generation up is his father, and then the next generation are his grandparents, Horace Stevens and Viola Wilkins. And for me, you know, going up, it's my mom, then it's my grandma Marion Stevens, and then her parents are Horace Stevens and Viola Wilkins. So that couple is my great-grandparents and David Stevens' grandparents. Then there are lots of free calculators online they're called cousin calculators. So you can put in those relationships. So if you are I would put in, you know, if you are the great-grandchild of the ancestor and your relative is the grandchild of the same ancestor, then you are your relative and you are first cousins once removed. So that's my relationship to David Stevens, first cousins one time removed. To get the most out of Ancestry DNA, you want to input your family tree into Ancestry. One great thing that you can do if you did put in your tree, and also if your matches put in their family trees, Ancestry will look at the trees, they'll compare all the trees of all of your DNA matches, and you can click at the top of your results list, common ancestors, and then it will show you a list of people who, according to your tree and your DNA matches trees, what the common ancestor is. So you'd get your results, and only if you have common ancestors with these individuals will you see that person in your list. So these are all my DNA matches, and our trees align to where it shows who our common ancestor is. And you could select a particular person to see how you are in fact related. So if I chose, say, Kristen Baum from that list, then towards the left, it will show you the common ancestor, and it's the same as with David Stevens, Horace Stevens, and Viola Wilkins. And then you could look more at her tree if you wanted to see other people that she's related to. So where it says 387 people next to linked tree, if you open that up, you can see the full tree. And then you can see where Earl Stevens and Viola Wilkins are in the tree over here to the left. And you can see who else is in her tree. In my opinion, the most powerful tool in Ancestry DNA are the shared matches. So add to your DNA match list you could look through. And let's say you see someone without a tree, and David Stevens, he didn't have a tree. You can see there, it says no trees. And you want to try to figure out your relationship to him, or, you know, what side of the family he's from. So if you were to click on David Stevens or whoever, and then where the arrow is, you can see shared matches. Click on shared matches, and then it will bring you up a list of DNA matches for both of you that overlap with both of you. So all of these people are in my match list and also David Stevens' match list. And then you can look at those people's trees and see, so you can see a number of them do have trees on their accounts, and you could click on one of those, or really you want to click on multiple of them to see what families that you're seeing. And then you can, from there, determine what side of the family he's on, what family line he descends from. Another thing you can do, there is a button for groups. And if one of your parents has tested, you could select mother's side or father's side, and that's only if one of your parents tested will it tell you mother's side or father's side. So you could do that and generate a list for one of the sides of your family. You could also select new matches. Say you haven't logged on in a while and you wanted to see who's new in your match list. You could click new matches, and according to this screenshot, I had 150 matches that were new. And you can tell that they're new also by, there'll be a blue dot to the left of the photo on their profile. You can also create custom groups. So maybe you're really interested in certain family lines. One of them that I'm really interested in is my Hoffman family line. So I created a custom group. You can see there by the blue dot, Hoffman. There's 12 people in my group. So if you did want to create a custom group, you could click Create Custom Group. And then you can name it whatever you want, and you can assign whatever color you want to it. And then you have your group. I've got 12 people in my Hoffman group. And how you add someone to your group is you see someone in your match you want to add, and then there'll be this plus sign. You can see that over to the right, and it says add to group. If you hover over it, so you would just click that plus sign next to the name, and then another kind of box opens up to the side, and you can choose what group you want to add them to. I just have a Hoffman group. So you put a check in that box, and then you click add to group, and then that person is added to the group. And you can choose multiple of your matches too. You can see over here to the left, I can select multiple people in this list at the same time and add them all to that particular group if you wanted to. You can also add notes to your matches. So a particular match of mine that I'm interested in is Alan Dieter, and I wanted to add a note to him. So you click add note, and a little note box opens up to the right, and then you can type it in. And for this, I wrote descendant of Stephen Hoffman only from his first marriage to Augusta Constance Myers. And I'm trying to figure out what the last name is supposed to be, because the family went by multiple names. They went by Hoffman and they went by Polson. And so sorting out this Alan Dieter, because he only relates to Stephen Hoffman as opposed to from my great grandma Agnes, really helps me separate out that Hoffman family line. And hopefully I can figure out whether the real name is Hoffman or Polson. And you'll see that note. Then after you create a note, when you look at your DNA match list, it will display for you. Only you would see that if you're logged into your account. And you can also sort by notes. So if you remember you put a note by someone and you couldn't remember their name, you could click on notes, and anyone that you wrote notes for, it would just return a list of those people. You can also message someone. So, this is one of the great things with DNA is you're going to find biological relatives that you may not know, and you want to get in contact with them and share information, share documents, share photos. So if I wanted to reach this Alan Dieter, I could click message, and then he would get notification in his email that someone sent him a message. And I found that sometimes people will respond, sometimes they won't. You can see on their account how long it's been. If I were to click on where it says AD over here, it would tell me on his account the last time he logged in, or like a general time frame, like 6 months or less. It's been over a year since they logged in. If you see someone who hasn't logged in for years, they're probably not that interested in their DNA. They may have just lost interest in it, or maybe they just took a test to find out their ethnic percentages, something like that. Another thing that you can do is you can search within your results. So you can see the search where the red arrow is. It will open up some boxes. One of the ways that you can search is by your match's name. So this would be the name that the person put on their profile, and people can put in their exact name. They can just put in a first name. They could put in their initials. They can put in a username. But this is one way. If someone does put in their true name, then you could put in, say, a surname. So if I wanted to see if there were any more Dieters in my matches, then I could put that in, and then it would give me a list of only those that have the name Dieter on their profile. You can also search your matches trees. So you can see surname and matches trees in the middle. So you could put in you put in that surname, and anyone that had that surname in their tree, it would come up in your results list. Another one that I think isn't used probably as frequently as could be is birth location in matches tree. So I'm interested in my Hoffman family, and they're from the Wielkopolski area of Poland. And so I put in that in the location. So I put in Wielkopolski, Poland. So that's a region in Poland. And then I got this result list. It filtered out, everyone else. And this location, Wielkopolski, must be in their family trees. So they have to have a tree in their profile. And then you can click on a match. And I clicked on this bottom match, TGO Bath. And I looked at their tree, and I found a couple of interesting names. I see Florentina Golubska, and I have a Golubska family in my tree. And then over to the right, I have a Krieger family in my tree, who Krieger is supposedly the maiden name of my immigrant ancestor, Stephen Hoffman. So both of those names are of interest to me. So then what I did is I did shared matches like I showed you earlier with that TGO Bath. And I got this list of shared matches, and lots of them are Golubskis. So then it told me that's the side of the family that she's related to. You can also, up at the top there, see map. If you click on that, it will show you a map of where your matches live, or at least the place they lived that they put on their ancestry profile. So they would have to fill in that data. And then you can see, if you're interested in some ancestors from a particular location, you can see if there's anyone of your matches that live in that location. I was hoping for some Polish folks, but I didn't really come up with anything. But I did find an interesting match for my Irish side. Before I go into that, I would say, most people that take Ancestry DNA are from the United States. I think, sometimes people are leery, sending your DNA overseas. My Heritage is a company that has some more foreign members, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. So I found a marker in Northern Ireland, and my Irish line that I've uncovered is from Armagh, Ireland. You can see here on the gravestone, James Sims was from Armagh, Ireland, which is both a county name and a city name, and I'm not sure which that refers to. And that match, Jules Rippeth, it says she's from Armagh County in Northern Ireland. So I thought that was very interesting. So I did shared matches with Jules, and this is my list that I got. And when I looked at Dan Schaefer down at the bottom, I saw someone in his tree of interest, Robert Sims. And when I clicked on more information about Robert Sims, it has that person was born in Armagh in Northern Ireland. And, Sims and Armagh, that seems like it could be a connection. Now, if you have any relatives who are of an older generation than you, I highly recommend that you have them test if they're willing. Because with each generation that's born, each generation loses half of their parents' DNA. So you want to have the oldest generation test, because the oldest generation's DNA will usually get you a step closer to your ancestors. So they're probably going to match more people than you do for whatever side of the family that they're from. And so I had my mom test. So this is one of her matches. I was looking through her matches and I found this Patty 7777. And Patty, our shared ancestors, one of them is Elizabeth Ray, and Elizabeth is Jane Sims from Armagh. That's her daughter. And I saw that Patty 7777 also matched with Jules, who lived in Armagh County, Ireland. So it kind of helps firm up that maybe that's the connection for me and Jules. There's these different things that you can put together. Of course, some of these things could be coincidence, but you're trying to build a case. So I'm switching gears a little bit. So I mentioned, have your family members test. Well, say if you don't have anyone of an older generation and you do test, Ancestry does have a different feature where they can figure out, which the matches from the different sides of the family. So this is my dad's account, and his parents are not living. So if I go into his profile, there's this little tab by parent beta. So this is a new feature. And what they'll do is they'll separate out his matches according to parent 1 and parent 2. They don't know, Ancestry doesn't know which side of the family, whether it's your mom's side or your dad's side, but they can tell these people match one parent and these people match another parent. So you can see parent 1, parent 2, and they'll put some of the surnames that are in the matches for that side of the family. So oftentimes you can then yourself determine what side of the family it is. So for my dad, this Johnson Yaziak side, I knew that was his paternal side, and I know Majka is from his maternal side. So then if you click edit parent, you can input which side of the family that is. And if you make a mistake, you can go back and change it. So now on his profile, his matches can be distinguished between his maternal side and his paternal side. So like I showed you earlier, how I could separate out by my mom and my dad, here you could separate out just his, either yours if you don't have your parents, if your parents haven't tested, or one of your parents, you could then separate out by their maternal or their paternal side by clicking on those. So that's an awesome new feature. Going into a different section of Ancestry DNA. So I showed you this at the beginning, where you can click on DNA story, DNA matches, or through lines. Through lines is an interesting thing to explore. So if you click on through lines, it can give you a lot of great leads. You can get some of this similar information by playing and sorting your matches, but this kind of does some sorting for you. What it does is, the ones that have that green bubble that says potential ancestor, so those are potential ancestors for you, obviously. And you can click on one. And what it is essentially anyone who is going to be listed. See how I've got 6 DNA matches here? Any of your DNA matches that you find in this through lines, they have tested with Ancestry DNA and they have a tree on their account. And so they are a DNA match to you, and then they have put information in their tree. And the reason that this Agnes Moffat, it says evaluate, because one or multiple of my DNA matches have put Agnes Moffat in their tree, and it's someone that I don't have in my tree. I only have, I have George Ray, who is my 4th great grandfather, and in one of my DNA matches tree, they determined that Agnes Moffat is his mother. So it's telling me this could be your 5th great grandmother. So it gives you some leads. They may or may not be correct, but that's what their tree says. So off to the right, it'll show me this tree linked to one of my DNA matches has Agnes Moffat in their tree, and then I could click on their tree and view it. And then down lower, it says Ancestry member trees. So these are not DNA matches, but there are other people who are in Ancestry that have Agnes Moffat in their tree. So I could look at their trees if I wanted to too. And you can, if you only want to see your potential ancestors, you can just see only potential ancestors. Or if you wanted to see, it'll also list the ones that aren't green like this. It's any ancestor in your tree. You could click on that if you wanted to too. So here's ancestors linked in my tree. And how this will help you is, so these are people in my tree, they're definitely there. And if I click on one of these people, I can see my DNA matches who also have these people in their tree. So say, this is one of my favorite people to research, Aretus Lyman root. And it says 7 of my DNA matches have him in their tree. So if I click on him, here's me. There's 4 other generations here between me and the person they're showing Lyman root, who I think is Aretus Lyman root's son. And there's 7 of my DNA matches. So if I clicked on that number 4, it shows me everyone in my tree between me and Aretus. So there's my mom, my grandma, great, and so on and so on. And then what you could do if you want to see, well, where do my DNA matches? How do they fall in? They all have Aretus in his tree. I can click on where it says 7 DNA matches. and then it splits them up. So I descend from Catherine Root, who is Aratus's granddaughter. And 4 of those DNA matches also descend from Catherine. And then 3 of the matches descend from Clara, who's the sister of Catherine. And then you could click on these as well, where it says 3 and where it says 4. So if I click on where it says 3 DNA matches, then here are my DNA matches. And then you can go up their tree to see exactly how they're related. So some of them descend through George Stevens, who is the son of Clara, and some of them descend from Aidan Stevens, who is also the son of Clara. And then I could do the same thing for the other side. So I clicked on where it said 4 matches, and these are my DNA matches here. And some of them descend from Lyman Arthur Stevens, who descends from Earl Horace Stevens. I descend from Marion Stevens, and then others descend from her brother Edwin Stevens. So it's just telling you, helping you visualize your relationship to these DNA matches. Now I'm going to show a bit about my heritage. You can go ahead and go to the DNA menu and click DNA matches. And something interesting that my heritage does. Before I start that, my intention was showing you, I'm going to show you some my heritage and some 23andMe, is to show you things that are different than what Ancestry does. So my heritage and 23andMe, they're both going to give you lists of your DNA matches. And something that's different in my heritage is you can sort your results by the location where your ancestors are from. This is kind of like the match feature, the map feature that I showed you in Ancestry, but here you can do a drop-down box and choose, this is the place where your DNA match lives, or at least put where they lived on their profile. And I'm interested in my Polish people, so I would click on Poland, and then it would give me a list of matches. And I got 46 DNA matches. So more people from overseas you send their DNA here because it's a bit where the company is located is closer to them. It's not in the United States. Another thing that you can do is you can sort your matches by ethnic groups. So when another thing besides people matches, you get your ethnic group percentages. So you can sort your matches according to ethnic group. And the ethnic groups are split up differently from different testing company to different testing company. So some of my choices for my heritage: North and West European, Eastern European, Irish, Scottish, and Welsh, and Balkan. So you could click on any of those. I chose Eastern Europe, and then you can get a list of matches that also have Eastern European DNA. Once you're in your match list too, you can click on your matches profile and it'll give you more information. So it automatically generates shared DNA matches. So, but it includes a little more detail than Ancestry does. So the person in the middle is who me and my chosen match, Paula Brevard, who we have in common. So what it does that's extra is it tells both my match, my relationship to Tim Brevard, or the estimated relationship that the company gives me. So according to my heritage, I'm first cousin twice removed to fourth cousins with Tim Brevard, but Paula that's her son. And this is the extra bit, as you can see the relationship or predicted relationship between your chosen match and the shared match. So that's a great feature. Another thing that it does is if you see these little pink marks over here, that means that you have an overlapping segment of DNA, something called triangulation. So triangulation is when 3 or more people have an overlapping bit of DNA. So this little mark means Paula, Dan, and me have overlapping DNA in a particular spot on one of our chromosomes or multiple of our chromosomes. So you could look at that in more detail by going to DNA Tools and then Chromosome Browser. And what you can do is you can choose up to several of your matches and see where you might have overlapping DNA, or where you and that person shares DNA. So I chose several of my matches. You can see that they're all color coded here. And then you click compare. And so these numbers over here are my chromosomes. So we each have 23 chromosomes. This is my first chromosome, second chromosome, third chromosome. And each of these lines represents one of these people I chose as a match. On the second chromosome, you can see a little green here. That's a little bit of shared DNA that I have with Barbara Andrews, who's color-coded as green. Over here, you see a little kind of reddish pink or whatever that is. That's Mel Ball. And down here on the third chromosome, where the blue is, I share a bit of DNA with Justin Christie. You can keep looking through that and see if there's any overlap between you and 2 or more people. And if I keep looking through my results, on the 19th chromosome, me and all of these people triangulate. See how we have overlapping DNA on that one chromosome? And that bit of DNA would come from, particular ancestors. I'm going to talk a little bit more about triangulation in a bit. Another thing that you can do that's unique with MyHeritage is something called autoclusters. You go to DNA Tools, then you go to autoclusters. And it's not an immediate thing. You would click the generate button, and then they usually tell you it'll take a day or two, and then you'll get an email when your results are ready. And it will group your matches. So this is a list of names, this is a list of names, and they group them according to people that share overlapping DNA with each other. So this red group, they share DNA, the orange group shares DNA, and so on and so on. And so you can perhaps figure out the relationship or the family line that are in these particular groupings. Maybe you'll recognize some of the people and you know how you're related to them, or you can get in contact with them or look at their trees if they have trees on their profile. I just zoomed in a little bit there. So moving on to 23andMe. So you can look at a match and they'll give you a predicted relationship. So Belinda Miga, she's predicted as a third cousin on my father's side, and it just kind of shows that relationship. And people can opt to put this information on their profile. So, I'm interested in her. I'm from Dunkirk. I see she's got some Dunkirk, Chautauqua County connections. You can put family names on your profile, and she has MEGA, and I know that's one of my lines from Dunkirk, so this is interesting to me. You can find relatives in common, just like Ancestry and MyHeritage. And just like MyHeritage, it will show you the relationship between the shared match and you. So my first match is my dad, and you can see he's listed as my father, and he's predicted to be a second cousin to Belinda. It will also tell you whether you share overlapping DNA. So me and Belinda and my dad share overlapping DNA. And this is my sister, this is my niece. And then down here, Louise Anders, we share overlapping DNA. For a couple of them, see how it says connect to view. This is an optional thing that you can do, this DNA overlap information. If you don't, you have to connect with your matches, and you just clicked this match, or I'm sorry, this button where it says connect to view, and then it will, a request to connect will go to the particular match. And if they agree to connect, then it will tell you if yes, you share, you triangulate DNA with these folks, or no, you don't. And you can choose matches and do the same thing like MyHeritage and see exactly on the chromosomes where you share with these people. So just to get into triangulation a tiny bit more. So again, it's when 3 or more people share overlapping DNA. And what you do is you want to determine your common ancestor with that person. So you see that triangulation, you see that overlap, and then you compare family trees with you and the other 2 people, and you determine what ancestral couple you have in common. And then once you figure that out, then you can assign that bit of DNA to a specific ancestral couple. So that can help you prove, you can help someone prove ancestry when documentation for their ancestor isn't present. So once someone has mapped a bit of DNA to a particular couple, if you match that person on that segment, you're also a match to that ancestral couple. So for example, if there's some people who descend from Robert Jones, Sarah Jones, Charles Jones, and Martha Jones, and they have figured out through documentation that the parents of their ancestor is Charles Jones and Elizabeth Smith. And then there's this Mary Jones and her descendants. Let's say there's no good documentation for Mary. Say she was born before there were birth certificates, and there's just no proof of who her parents are through documentation. If her descendants then triangulate with these other folks, and they had assigned a bit of DNA to Charles Jones and Elizabeth Smith, then Mary's descendants can say, I descend from Charles Jones and Elizabeth Smith because I triangulate with these guys on these bits of DNA that they have assigned to a particular ancestral couple. And there's a free tool from that DNA Painter website where you can do chromosome mapping. You would click right here where it says chromosome mapping. And once you do that, there is an introduction to using the DNA Painter. It sounds like it would be complicated. It's really not. It's a lot of just cutting and pasting of data into this program. It's quite easy. This is what I've done so far. I haven't done a lot with it, but these are my chromosomes, and I've assigned these bits of DNA to these ancestral couples here. I don't recommend, you don't want to map the DNA of super close relatives. I would say do great grandparents and further, or like second cousins. So that would be like someone that's a second cousin to you. You would share great grandparents. Do that and further, because you'll have these really large chunks of DNA if you map your parents, for example, on this, each side of your chromosome, one full side matches with your mom and one full side matches with your dad. So the whole chromosome would be lighted up, and you don't want that. Another thing that is unique to 23andMe is they do this family tree. They put some of your DNA matches, not all of them, they put them into a family tree for you. So I just wanted to show you, this is really tiny, but how wide this tree is that they created. I'm going to zoom in a little bit further. So I'm going to be looking at the dad side of my family. Both of my parents have tested. I'm going to zoom in. And so if you see, it's a little hard to see, but see this little symbol here, the pink and the green, that's a chromosome. This person has a little chromosome, this person does, this person does. 23andMe has put those people in this tree. This other information I have input. These were blank when you opened up this tree. So I corresponded with this Louise Anders and figured out how we're related and who our common ancestors are. And they were Lawrence Miga and Julia Majka. But it kind of just separates out. It can, it looks at the overlapping DNA and it can figure out perhaps what side of the family that these folks would be on and about how many generations you are away from them. It's something to play with. I don't use it a super lot, but it is interesting. And that is everything that I had for you today. I'm going to get out of my presentation. I'm going to stop the recording.